Dear ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you all again to the online course on East Caucasian languages organized by the Linguistic Convergence Laboratory of the Higher School of Economics from Moscow, Russia. My name is Ezequiel Coyle. I am a research fellow in this lab and will be the moderator of today's session. Today, the third lecture in our series of 13 is entitled Phonology of East Caucasian Languages. It will be given by our colleague, George Moroz. Before introducing our speaker, I would like to clarify some organizational issues. Each lecture will be recorded, live streamed on YouTube and stored on that platform afterwards. The lectures will go uninterrupted, followed by a question period. Those of you who are joining the lecture via Zoom will be muted throughout the session in the interest of the lecturer and sound quality. You may send your questions via Zoom chat or YouTube live chat. At the end of the talk, I will read selected questions out loud for the speaker to answer them. And we apologize in advance that there might be not enough time to address all of your questions after the talk and hopefully find a way to answer you. Well, it's my pleasure to introduce you George Moroz, a research fellow at the Linguistic Convergence Laboratory and senior lecturer of the Faculty of Humanities, School of Linguistics in the same university, Higher School of Economics. He obtained his degree in linguistics from the Eurasian State University for the Humanities, and his PhD thesis is on phonology of Circassian languages. He has been part of dozens of field trips, expeditions for studying different languages in different parts of Russia, especially in Caucasus. His areas of expertise are linguistic documentation, phonetics and phonology, and linguistic data science. He is author of several journal articles and book chapters, as well as linguistic databases and several widely used R libraries for the study of different aspects of linguistic data, such as link typology and the recently released phone fieldworks. And today, George will talk to us about phonology of East Caucasian languages. Garik, the floor is yours.
Thank you, SC, for this presentation. I will start with sharing my screen, probably. It's here. So I guess you can see the first slide, aren't you?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I'm glad to start this phonology part of our long series of lectures. So today I will try to talk about phonology of East Caucasian languages. This presentation will be available online, but you also can download it now. So during this talk, I will briefly introduce you some goals of this talk. Then we go through data that I will build my analysis on. We'll spend some minutes on trying to discuss methods. Then we'll talk about different inventory sizes of different East Caucasian languages. Then we go to the frequency analysis. And after this, I will try to compare the obtained results with the several other phonological databases like Phoible and Eurasian phonological database. Today I won't talk much about suprasegmental features, but I add one slide, or actually three, about it. So it will be at the end. But you also can ask me something about suprasegmental features of East Caucasian languages. So first, I would like to say that there is a lot of written on phonology of East Caucasian languages. First, it's not the first, but it's like a huge collection of different phonological description made more or less with the same point of view, is the book of Kibrik and Kadzasev. Actually, for some reason I had it here. It looks like this. So it's really nice work because it contains most of the East Caucasian languages. And this book contains descriptions from different languages, and also it's a dictionary of different words, so it's also lexical collection. There is also, should be mentioned, this series of the indigenous languages of the Caucasus that also had part on East Caucasian languages. There is also a series of books that called Языки мира, so the languages of the world, that contains a lot of different language families. So it's really a huge project that also contains a separate book on Caucasian languages. There is also a descriptive paper by Sven Gravlunder that you can look at. And the more recent articles that you can look at is made by Begush and Lena Boris in the Oxford Handbook of Language of the Caucasus. The important part here that those chapters that I mentioned are not just description of the language, but also just overall description of, first for Begush, it's phonological description of Caucasian languages. Here, Boris is talking about suprasegmental features and intonation and tone. Also, I think forthcoming, it's worth mentioning forthcoming handbook of Caucasian languages by Korykov and Yuri Korykov and Timur Maysak. But I think there we have only the chapters about different languages, but I think it will be more fruitful than the previous attempts because it will have just more languages in hand. So some languages that will be there and didn't have any description before. So there are also a lot of general description of East Caucasian languages that contain some phonological part of it, but I won't mention it there. There are a lot of them. So the next part, that there is also a huge work made by Russian, Georgian, and it's something like a huge school of historical comparative linguists that worked exactly on those languages. So they created a lot of different work on historical comparative phonetics. I won't talk about this today at all, but if you are interested in this topic, just write me a letter. I will send you a lot of literature whenever I have. Okay. So the main goal of this lecture is to discuss the size of consonant and vowel inventories of East Caucasian languages, explore sounds that are typical for East Caucasian languages and not so typical for other languages, try to figure out what a typical inventory consists of, and also compare the results with topological databases like Phoible and Eurasian phonological inventories. So first, what about data? So languages, we already discussed it during previous lectures, but just brief reminding to you that we are talking about East Caucasian languages, and there is a traditional division into branches like Nah languages here, Cesic languages, Avarandic branch, Lesgic branch, and there are also isolates like Dargwa, Lag, and Hinaluk. As I mentioned earlier, there is a book by Kibrik and Kadzasov that contains phonological description of most of them. So here in blue, we can see only those languages that are not present in this book. So you see it's more or less like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 languages is not present from more or less 30. So it looks like this book could be really nice background for this kind of comparison. So I used the data in this book and added from several resources information about languages that are so it's not present in this book. So here you can see baccalaureate description that made mostly from by the same people. So it's Kibik and Kazasov and the huge a team of members who describe this. But all others are not made by Kibrik and Kazasov, so it's different resources. So it's Botlich, Godobiri, Karata, Mehweb, Chechen, Ingush, and Tsovatush. So I collected those data. So I get some data from Kibrik and Kazasov. I get the description from those sources and collected. So I obtained more or less table with 1,905 rows and 9 columns. So the columns are the following. So first is just technical ID. The second is a branch, language, segment in IPA transcription, segment as it presented its source, the source itself, sound type. So for instance, consonant, vowel, and diphthong, some comments, and glottocode. So here is an example of the field row from this table. So here is the row number 1407. This is Lesgik. So there are possible other values will be Avar, Andik, Dargwa, Hinaluk, Lak, Lesgik, Nach, or Tsezik. The language is Tsahur. The segment in IPA is Ch, so it's geminated dental affricate. This is the representation of this same segment in the source. This is the source, so it's Kibik and Kazasov. Sound type, so ch is a consonant. So here they are restricted only to consonant, vowel, and diphthong. There is a comment that this geminated ch is actually a rare sound, and glottocode is tak 1249. For those of you who don't know what is glottocode is the code here, you could see it here, that used to encode all languages of the world within the Glottolog database. There is huge database of all languages of the world. So this is handy thing to have if you want to reference to language in the same way through all literature. So coming back, here we see this. So this information that I collected, and you can actually download this table and play around with this data by yourself. So it's online. Please play around. So here is a link if you are interested. It's here. Okay. So on the next slide, you see languages that we are discussing now. So this is a map for all languages that we have, and each dot represents one language. So here we have Tsovatush, Ingush, Chechen, and so on and so on. So here you can see more general map that will, so you can see here some Caucasus and some countries around. So as you see, each language here represented as dot, and all dots colored according to the language branch. So keep looking. So this color scheme will be all the same during the whole lecture. But this kind of view that is typical for those of you who like to work with words, for instance, is a little bit misleading, because when we represent everything with one dot, we actually missing a huge amount of villages. So here you can see all villages from the Chechnya, Ingushetia, and Dagestan, and some from Azerbaijan and Georgia. And you could see each dot here represent this one settlement. And here they are colored according to the language. So you can see that there is a huge variability, and there are some huge languages like, for instance, Chechen, Ingush, or Avar, or Dargwa, or Lesgian, and some less widespread languages like here, for instance, these Andic languages are not so widespread, as you can see, and Tsazic also not so widespread. Okay, so remember about this, but we will talk mostly in this kind of view. So let's continue. So first about methods. So the main goal is to introduce to you the phonological systems of East Caucasian languages. So it could be done like just listing of all inventories, but one by one. So here is Andic consonant system. Here is our consonant system. This is a little bit boring, little bit mechanical, because I just want to present you one slide with the inventory and then say a couple of words and then go to another. And again, from this kind of view, it's hard to make generalizations, at least on the fly. So it will be hard for you to do a generalization, and it will be useless for me to do so because I already have them, some kind of them in mind. Another way to do this same stuff is to present generalizations. So you'll make your own generalizations and present them using your knowledge or your feelings about this. So Johanna Nichols, during the previous lecture, she presented the more or less one slide about phonology of East Caucasian languages. And for a short version, it's probably not. But this kind of way is also restricted to peculiarities, and you need to be a specialist in order to do this. So my question here, is it possible to make more or less the same generalizations that Johanna Nichols made last time and use this with the data that I collected? So some of them about the, for instance, huge consonant inventories and I don't know, about some other features could be just easily visualized with a map. Some of them can be gathered via frequency and combinatorics analysis. So for instance, if you are interested what is common for these languages, it's easier to make the frequency analysis. And this is not something new that I proposed. More or less, it's the same thing that has been done for Australian languages, but for their, let's say, smaller scale, because they analyzed more languages and a little bit different way, but we will talk about this on the last slide, I think. So inventory size. As I said, it's easy to visualize this using the table that we have. So here is the same dot that we've seen before, but each of them covered by the number. So I don't expect you to remember coloring of each dot. So maybe you remember that this is Ingush and this is Chechen, but you definitely don't remember that this is Ahwah. But I will get back to you and you'll see the affiliation in a minute. From this kind of map, you can see that consonant inventories range from 33 to 91 consonant. So as Johanna Nichols mentioned last time, East Caucasian languages are known for these huge consonant inventories. But it looks like those huge consonant inventories are not so typical for East Caucasian languages. So you see that the most languages have 42 plus minus 5 consonant. It's not like, so in average, all languages of the world have definitely less consonant. So this will be true. But it's not like giants with 70 or 80, 90 or something. They are rare even for East Caucasian languages. So here you can see on the x-axis consonant inventory size. So you see that, for instance, there are 2 languages with 40 consonants in my database. And here we have number of languages. And here we can see that around 44 or something, there are 4 languages with this amount of consonant. Okay, so we see that the most data is collected on the left part and less dispersed on the right part. We can also represent more or less the same information with the coloring dot. So we see whether the distribution of the this huge consonant inventories, is it dispersed through Dagestan or collected, combined with the central area? And it looks like that it more or less typical for Andic and grouped together. So here is the Andic languages, and here is Archie that you could see. So the most majority of consonants is over here, and all other languages looks like they have more or less, they have less consonants than here in the center. So if you look at the particular details, you can list something like maximal systems and minimal system, and you can see that this maximum system is for Ahwah, Tindi, Chamalal, and they are all Andic. Archie is Lesgic. And those minimal systems are presented here in Nah, in Gush, in Sezek, Beshta, and in Hokwari. Let's compare Ahwah and Inhokwari. So here you can see I barely placed it on the slide, but here it looks like you see the Hu Ahwah system. It's really huge, but you can see that this effect is more or less because they have this kind of differences. So first, the most typical part is that they have a huge amount of adjectives, but all consonants have the labialized version, like here. So you see t and tw, ts and tsw, and so on and so on. And another thing that is common and make this system really huge is this system of geminates that spreads through even fricatives. So you see here distinction. Sometimes this distinction called gemination, sometimes it's called fortis, and it have different realization in different languages. But I merged it into one label of gemination. So here we have ts and ts, ch and ch. So this kind of distinction make it, this Ahwah system is really huge. If you compare this system to Inhokwari on the bottom, you can see that we have...
We lost the sound.
Sorry?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
We don't hear you, Gary.
Oh. That's strange. Could you hear me now?
Okay, now yes. Sorry. Go on, please.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Sorry. So so now you hear me. So we are comparing Ahwah and Inhokwari systems, and you can see that this distinction is mostly due to labialization that is spread through the whole system, and also for gemination that is also presented through all of them. Comparing to Inhokwari language that is over here, it's have more or less the same distinction. So you have more or less the same places of articulation. So here you have labials, dentals, alveolar zone, so dentals, alveolar, lateral, velar, uvular, epiglottal, and laryngeal. So more or less the same presented here. You just don't have those labialized and geminated sounds. So it looks like this gemination and labialization make this burst for increasing this number of languages. So here I have an example of geminated, aspirated, so the first aspirated, geminated, adjective, and adjective geminated. So I hope you will hear my sound.
Rekon, chako, rekol, reko.
Play it again.
Rekon, chako, rekol, reko.
So as you see here, you can see from the spectrogram that when we have something like, so comparing geminated and non-geminated, the differences mostly will be in the closure, so they have longer closure, and after the burst they have this aspiration part. So rekun, chakun. Comparing to adjectives, they won't have anything after the burst. So here you see blank part over here. So rekul, so you can hear anything. And when you have geminated adjective, what is actually become geminated is the burst part. So the geminated will be looks like reku, ku. When we're talking about this, the same effect will be in affricates, but it will be a little bit different. So it will be atsa, 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 and atsa. So when we're talking about the affricates, when we have geminated adjective affricate, then you have this part after the burst. So the fricative part of the affricate will be more intense and will be again. It looks like the burst starting from the burst part. It will be more intense and will be then making it less intense. Another typical thing is laterals. So you have k, you have adjective one k, and you have also fricative k. So here is the sound. So klurtla, hitlu. So it looks like this. If you take for granted the previous part that I've said about the burst part, it looks like this in Andic looks like more geminated one. And it actually makes sense because sometimes those sounds are analyzed exactly in this way. Okay. So from now, I will show you some maps that will have features in them. So it will be the same colors as before, but you will see the black or white circle around the dots, and that will represent absence or presence of some feature. So if we, so for now, for geminate consonants, it more or less visible that they are absent in all Cesic languages over here, and most Lesgic languages and Hinalug, but they are present in Chechen, Tzohatush, all Andi languages except Avar. So you can see it also in some part of, so here is Archie, Dargwa actually divided into two parts. So there is a huge Dargwa area, if you remember previous maps, and some of them have this distinction and part of them don't. So the southern part, southern Dargwa will have this feature. So you can see that it looks like aerial pattern, but it's a little bit strange, and Lesgians around they don't support this feature. But they kind of group together. Labialized consonants are absent in Nach as a whole, but more or less common through other branches. So you can see some Andi languages that lack labialized consonants. You can also find some Ces languages that lack this, and some Lesgian that lack these sounds, but it's mostly presented in all of them. For Nach, it's not worth mentioning that those labialized consonants, they have instead something that we call diphthong, that called in grammars diphthong. So it's possible that these kind of features just merge into this kind of analysis throughout. This distinction between when you have, for instance, qua, so it's sometimes could be just matter of analysis whether you treat this feature as consonantal or vocalic. It's also the question whether it's possible to have labialized consonants at the end of the word. So that will be more like clue in order to analyze it as a system that have labialized consonants. But all the time, this kind of analysis is a little bit sleepy. Okay, what about lateral consonants? It looks like an aerial pattern. So you can see here that all Avar and Endic have it, all Cesic and Butts have it. And then for some reason you find it in Archie, that is Lesbian, and in absent in all other Lesbian, Dargwar, Locke, and so on. So this kind of looks like more central feature than previous one that we've seen over here with gemination. On the next slide, I want to present you the same story about vowels. So you can see that there are languages with 5 vowels. There are languages with 21 vowel, and it looks like those systems with the huge vowel inventories are grouped together again. So for most of the languages of the East Caucasian languages, it looks like there are 10 plus minus 5 vowels. But again, there is a huge tail that we have here that contains this huge number of vowels, and we will look at them in a minute. So the champions here are Beshta, Ahwah, again, Hunzib, Bagwalal, and the minimal system is Avar or Cesic or Agu. Here you can see the Beshta and Avar system. This Avar system is more or less typical. So for all languages of the world. So this is like standard triangle that you can see here. Beshta have the additional, so in addition to have the long vowels, it has nasalized vowels, and it also have these umlaut sounds that are present in Beshta and Nach languages. So I can see that in order to obtain this system, you need to have this nasalization and long vowels. Again, from this map, you can see, again, dark colors mean the huge number, the bright color mean the small number, like presented here. So you can see that, again, the system with the huge vowel inventories are grouped together, and those are mostly Cesic and Andic. What we can say about nasal vowels. Nasal vowels presented in Andic and in Cesic, but not all of them. So you see that Avar lack nasalization, and Hinuk and Ces lack the nasal vowels. And the same story for all the rest of East Caucasian languages. So you see it that, again, it's something in the center. And it looks like through all the talk, I will discuss 2 kind of features that are spread in the central area or spread to the through all languages, through all branches of the East Caucasian languages. So here there's a map about long vowels. So long vowels are presented here in Nach languages, in Andic languages, but some of them lack those vowels. In Cesic languages, but for some reason it's absent in Ces. Maybe there are different dialects of Ces, so in some of them it's preserved, and some of them, I think, this description that I have from Quebec and Kazasov lack it, but I think that I've heard about different subsystems that have one or even a whole bunch of long vowels in Ces. Here you have Mehbab Dargwa that lacks this feature, and Kaitak Dargwa that have this feature, and so forth, so on. So so again, you see that this feature is so for each branch except Nah, it half and half. So it mostly present, but some of them are lacking this feature. And here is a story about diphthongs. Sometimes some diphthongs, so some combination of vowels are analyzed by as a diphthong, and those kind of systems presented in Nach languages. But it also, again, it's a little bit complicated and sometimes depend on the analysis and the phonological analysis that you want to see in your language, because again, it's possible to reanalyze some of the systems that we have in the rest of East Caucasian languages as this combination of, so now they are analyzed as combination of vowel and y, vowel and w, so some glides. So it's possible to reanalyze them, and definitely they have sometimes realized as diphthongs. Okay, so we mostly discuss inventory sizes. We discuss different features that are present in East Caucasian languages. So now I'm moving to the next part about frequency analysis. So here is the segments presented in all East Caucasian languages. It's a little bit misleading caption over here, but the idea that those are segments that are present in all languages of the Caucasus, or of the East Caucasian languages. So you see b, d, g, p, t, k, and glottal stop. So j, s, sh, h, y, l, m, n, and r. So it looks like, okay, we've done the job, but where are the famous adjectives? And it looks like Udi lacks adjectives because they became non-aspirated. So you see here, this is system. So b, p, and p, d, t, and t. So because of this Udi, when we just treat this database as just show me sounds that present in all languages, you will get into this kind of trouble. This kind of change is not something so strange, because it's worth mentioning that Russian loans in some of East Caucasian languages are that, so Russian lacks the ejective consonant. So, but when words are borrowed into East Caucasian languages, they mostly appears with the ejective one, but not with the aspirated one. So this is the case of some languages. And it's also, I think it's important to say that I'm saying ejective consonants, just treating them as the same something. But the range of realization of ejective consonants is really huge. And now we are finishing an article about it. But the idea that we have, when you hear and you teach about ejectives during linguistic courses, the idea that we have those strong intensive sounds like tsa, ta, ta, ka. But the real story is that sometimes in the so the real realization of them could be not so intensive. So there is a huge, so it could be different from speaker to speaker. The second, it could be differ from language to language. So I will treat them as all the same system, but this kind of change from p to p and t to t, it's not something strange because of this variation in ejective realization in general. Okay, so here we can see a plot of the top most common consonants that present in different languages. So you see that glottal stop present in 30 East Caucasian languages that we have in the database. So you see there. So there is a bunch of sounds that present everywhere, but there are also more rare. So for instance, absent in, for some reason, is absent in one language, and so on and so on. So analyzing this kind of schemes, you could draw a simple line. So this is not something sophisticated way to draw a line. I just decided to draw it here. It could be moved somewhere in order to get some other results. So here I decided to have 20 of 30 languages, and this kind of system is represented over here. So here, what I call typical inventory for East Caucasian languages. You have this opposition of b, p, p. So you have adjectives. You have all places of articulation, more or less common for East Caucasian languages. So you have laryngeal, epiglottal, or pharyngeal. We'll discuss it at the end of the talk. Uvular, velar, lateral, palatal, and so on. Okay, so if you want to have more consonants, you just need to have some features that will spread through the system. So it will be labialization, gemination. You could have a lot of laterals if you're Tsazic or Andi, and pharyngealization. Again, pharyngealization is something that we'll discuss at the end when we will have in the last slide. And here you could do the same job for vowels. Again, this line is arbitrary, so you could draw another one and you will get the long A, for instance, in your system. And you see that the most typical vowel inventory is this. So without any nasalization. So if you want to have more vowels, get something like, get length, nasalization, or pharyngealization again. I'm treating this pharyngealization as appears in both consonants and vowels. This is because it have different realization and different analysis through all tradition of East Caucasian phonology. Because some phonologists analyze them as a feature of vowels, some analyze them as a feature of consonants, some treat them as a suprasegmental feature that is somehow associated with their some syllable in the word. So that's why this pharyngealization appears all over run, because it have the same effect on consonants, on vowels, and this difference could be really huge. So where you put it make a huge role and make a huge difference about consonant inventories, vowel inventories, and so on. So it looks like we compared consonants and vowels. So we have looked about some separate particular features of East Caucasian languages. We get the more common inventory for vowel and consonant. And I think the most important thing here is to compare whether these kind of systems that we get are strange, having in mind the topological databases that we have in hand. So there are two phonological databases. Phoible is a huge phonological database that contains a lot of different inventories. So we could go on their website and throughout. It's really worth looking. So here we have the same analysis for Phoible. So we can see again my arbitrary line. It could be drawn everywhere and you will move it. But even if you move it, in order to get something like glottal stop that is present in all languages, you need to go up to here. So you see the most common consonant is m, and it looks like it present in more like 400 and something. So here, in order to go and get the glottal stop that present is in all Nahd-Dagestani languages, you need to go up to here. So it will be 150 languages. So it's definitely not so popular in languages of the world. So here is the system that I get from the Phoible. So you see putg, so you see labial, dental, velar. There is also palatal and lateral. And there are plosives and fricatives. Over here, some nasals and sonorants. So as you see, it's different from the system that we get here. It's different because this system in Phoible lacks this zone of uvular and epiglottal and laryngeal, and it lacks the adjectives. But actually, the rest is the same. If we analyze it the same way, vowels, you will get the same result. So you see that on the top, you see those 5 vowels that present in most languages of the world. But if we get more, it's handy to go here. So for instance, if I draw a line here, we'll get the system with more vowels, but those vowels won't be a long vowel that we have in Nahd-Dagestani languages. They are definitely less popular in the languages of the world. I would like to compare the same result with the another phonological database that is focused on Eurasian phonological inventories. So by Mitzi Nikolaev and others. So it's mostly the same result. The form for some reason is a little bit different, but the inventory that I get is a little bit different from this inventory that we get here from Phoible. But the idea is mostly the same. So you have labial, dental, you have some fricatives, and you have velar, and the only laryngeal you have is h. In this system, if you look further, you could find glottal stop over here. So again, it's not so popular in those languages of Eurasia. With the vowel analysis, you will get the same results. So you will have U, E, O, A, E. But here you also have E as the most popular, but here the long vowels get the burst. So it's more common for Eurasia to have this E and U as a long vowel than in the languages of the world that we've seen from Phoible. So now we're going to the first small conclusions. East Caucasian consonant systems are more or less typical, except uvular and laryngeal consonants, except ejective consonants, and except laterals in upper Andic and Cesic larynges, and also except labialization and gemination that make a huge role in East Caucasian consonant systems. East Caucasian vowel systems are typical. And I think here is a dot. So it's not something that we can add those except for. All of these conclusions were data-driven, so it's not like, so it's definitely, I get the same result that Johanna already presented to you last time, but in a little bit in the longer format and with maps. But all of them are data-driven, so I used data in order to get them. So here is a problematic part because you actually, in order to do something like this, it looks like maybe you think that I propose to this analysis as better analysis. Not at all. Probably it's better in some points, but so you could easier to look what you see on maps, for instance, or during the frequencies. But the problem is that you depends on it definitely depends on the quality of your data. It's so for instance, I'm pretty sure that after the talk I will get some questions about, sorry, but in this language you had in your slide number or something that there is no this feature, but I have it. This actually depends on the data. So now I depends solely on the descriptions that I choose, and not all of them are ideal in that way. Another problem is definitely epiglottal and pharyngeal zone, because in this book they are, so in Kibri-Kazasov they are distinguished, but it's a little bit tricky, and pharyngeal sounds like h and h, and epiglottal sounds like h and r. Those sounds are definitely different, but this kind of distinction that we had, pharyngeal and epiglottal, should be treated as a little bit outdated since the works of Aslin on the structure of laryngeal part. So this kind of articulation analysis also need to be done in order to reanalyze those data in more modern form. Okay, so now I'm moving to the last part. There are 3 slides left. First is a simple introduction to syllable structure and suprasegmental features. So syllable structure is common through all North Pakistani languages. It's mostly CVCC, or sometimes it's even CVL, C when L stands for sonorant. Sometimes it's even easier, so it's CVL with L as a sonorant, or B in some Andic languages. And it looks like it more or less the same through all languages. It's possible to analyze this automatically, but not through my data. So, sorry, those presentation that I'm showing you is mostly data-driven from the different description. But in order to analyze syllable structure, you need to have data from different dictionary. And this is another database that we are collecting now, but it will be some data-driven analysis of syllable structure, something that could be done in the future. A lot of East Caucasian languages have stress. So some languages has more or less fixed stress, for instance, Mehwab. Or some languages has a tendency to have stress on the first 3 syllables, for instance. But it could be first, second, or third, for instance. And a lot of languages distinguish morphological meanings via stress. So plural marker in Dargwa languages mostly stressed, so it attracts stress. And there are also some other meaning, like I think tense aspect mood distinction, but I can't remember which of them. So definitely in Tanti they distinguish, I think, some participle and some tense, but I can't remember the details. So in most cases, there are not much minimal pairs for stress, but some of languages accidentally do have them. And again, about pharyngealization, this is a mysterious feature absent in only in Andic branch, but I thought that I corrected it. So it looks like, so the idea of this feature, again, I already discussed this, that it looks like it's a suprasegmental feature. So here is an example of 2 words, dir'an and dir'an. So gathers, blah, blah, and probably so gathers them and freeze. So here glosses are wrong. And when we have the negative prefix over here, when we add it to dir'an without pharyngealization, it will look like hadir'an. Sorry. But when we add negative prefix to pharyngalized root, the pharyngalization will spread through all the vowels, and this vowel will be pharyngalized. So you have had it an. And this kind of behavior is more or less, you could see it in some Dargwa varieties. It's not only, so this example is from Mihweb, but it's not only Mihweb data. In some other Dargwa data, you could see the same stuff. But it looks like it's possible that there are more than one pharyngalization in, for instance, Archie, or so it's definitely a mysterious feature that could be, that should be analyzed further and further. So here is an example. I was happy enough to record in Mihweb the pair with the avar borrowing ad and the native Mihweb word at, or atta, because mostly in Mihweb or any Dargwa varieties, when you have epiglottals, then you have automatic pharyngalization of the following vowel. So they are together, and since I treat them as the suprasegmental feature, it could be treated as both vowel and consonant going some changes. So I can put it here. It's here. So it's odd and atta with a, and over here and over here. But those cases are rare. When this is important, that the behavior of the pharyngalization is a little bit strange. So here I presented the example of the spread of pharyngalization. There's also could be presented some examples about the erase of pharyngalization when you have, for instance, plural forms for some nouns in Mihweb. So those pharyngalization features definitely looks like they're really similar to these tones in African, some languages of the Africa, when they spreading and disappear in some contexts, and so on and so on. Here is a map of pharyngalization, but here I merged together everything that could be treated as pharyngeal. So it's possible that, for instance, if you have some pharyngalization feature in the description of consonants, or in a pharyngalization description of vowels, or in pharyngalization description of some context, like in Nach. So you can see that this feature presented in Nach languages, here in Kris, and here in Dargwa, in Old Dargwa, Lok, and some Lesbian languages. It's a strange that it's not presented in Archie. I think here is a mistake. This dot should be black one. Okay, so you see that it looks like there are two different enclaves, like here, Old Dargwa languages, and if you remember the first map, when you'll see that there are a lot of different Dargwa and Lak languages in the center of the Dagestan over here. So this enclave is more or less here. And I think I'm going to the final slides. So thank you to the teams of researchers who collected all the data. Thank you to Viola Ivanova, who helped me with digitalization of Kibrik and Kadzasov. Thank you to Nina Dabrushina and Samira Ferhis for their comments on this presentation. And thank you to Misha Daniel for his comments on this presentation while I'm sleeping. So for some reason, I had the feeling that he commented it, but then he denied it. and to Linguistic Convergence Laboratory for organizing this course. And of course, thank you for your attention. If you like presented maps, see link typology. This is an R package that make it easier to create them. Spectrograms were created with von Fieldberg, as Ezekiel said at the beginning, is a new package that I wrote. And now it moved to R OpenSign today. Yeah, so I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Garik. We have quite a few questions in the chat. Well, actually also some discussion and questions and answers. I will share screen to show some of the questions we had. We have quite a lot. We have half an hour, so we probably can address most of the questions. So I have indented some which are answers to previous questions. There was a lot of discussion about geminates. For example, questions about here about Achbach. Are there any more morphophonological processes in Achbach that involve gemination? And if they are, how do anterior stops pattern in them? And related with that, this is extremely interesting. What kind of massive sound changes have brought about the Achbach sound system in general?
Thank you. Thank you, Dima, for the question. I don't know much about Achbach, so I can't answer your question, unfortunately. But definitely the some phonological description from Grisel that is going to appear will answer this. And this about Peter's question about, again, so since I don't know much about Achbach, it looks like it's outlier in Andic language, branch. So I don't know much about the sound change. So how Achbach became so weird.
Okay, we have also some other. I hear some echo. Okay, we have some other questions about Achbach, but I think we can skip that. So here, diphthongs in Nach versus labialization in other East Caucasian languages. Is it more economical in terms of the total number of phonemes to analyze Nach as having diphthongs, and there is no labialization word finally?
Yeah, I think that it's complicated question since it's could be, so the way of analyzing thing is not unique for all languages. Since they don't have any labialization word finally, I think it's possible to analyze them as diphthong. The problem here that so we lack this cross-linguistic, feature that will say, in that case, treat this as diphthong, and in this case, treat them as combination. This is a problem because those kind of tricks could be different. It could be phonetic realization, and some researchers will look at them mostly. It could be phonological differences, and some of researchers will look at this and more precise. For some reason, some people believe that phonology and phonetics should do more or less, so work more or less the same, but there are cases when something that could be phonologically analyzed in one way do have phonetically could be analyzed differently. So it's an open question, I think.
Okay, probably related to this it's a very recent question from Ken Keynes, who says, can we submit conflicting data to you, for example, NIS UDI? How would we do that? And somebody's answering about your GitHub. I don't know if you have any comment.
So you can just you can write me a letter if you're not familiar with GitHub, or make a pull request. And actually, if you want to do something with this data, just go on, do something. It's there, you can use this. So if you, for some reason, need this data, use it. If you want to cite it, okay, I will make it possible to cite it. So I don't think it's any problems with this. So if you want to contribute, it's possible to, I didn't thought about this as a whole database. So, but it could be done. It's really simple to create one if you are guys interested in such a database.
Okay, here there's another question from Peter Kadiev. Says, I probably missed something about vowels, but does it mean that Dagestan do not usually have, for example, labialized front vowels or schwa and equal answers, and also no back and rounded vowels? So any comment on this?
Some of them has schwa, some of them, so in Beshta that I presented, there are, I think, schwa and, or maybe it's u, so it's, but I think so something like u and it's present there, but it's not typical for Dagestani languages. So it's present in Nach language, in Nach branch. It's present in some Lesgic, but it looks like it's not similarly analyzed through all system. So, for instance, it's possible to have more or less the same a in Dargwa, in Rutul, and in Nah, but it will be analyzed differently. So this make this kind of analysis not so simple. But if you break every sound into features, that could be done easily using, for instance, Phoible, because there is connection to some feature system. You could do the same analysis, and I think it will be more or less interesting to analyze, for instance, is there any round vowels? Is there any, but there are definitely, but for instance, is there any front vowels, and what kind of combination of front and back, and or any other features that we are interested in?
Okay, we have a follow-up question here. I think it was misunderstood. They say, sorry for the wording, my question about 40s and geminates that we are going to find here. 40 geminates or fluent are acoustically similar to those in Korean. He meant, or she meant, Nach Dagestan in general, not only Ahbach. So is it a similar case of that of Korean? Are you aware of this?
I'm not, I don't know much about Korean. Oh, I can't remember the Korean system, sorry. So out of hand.
Okay, maybe if there is a follow-up question, we can discuss it.
Part is geminate upstrands. It's definitely, it's also something like strange labels that we have in phonology. So it could be the same, it could be different. So different people put their different information in the analysis. So this is complicated notions, I think.
Okay. This is another follow-up about the discussion on diphthongs by Robert Bugenhagen. He says, important for interpretation of diphthongs and labialization is the question of whether a language exhibits less controversial vowel clusters. Do Caucasian languages have vowel clusters like ae, ea, oa, etc.?
So for some reason I can't see the question, but
oh, sorry, I have it in the chat. I thought that was being shared. Sorry, I will copy it here. So it's the very recent question. Just live in chat.
So the problem with the so this is also, thank you for this question. It's really nice to have it. So this is also a problem because for most East Caucasian languages, the standard analysis is that there is no any vowel initial words and actually vowel initial syllables. Because in that case, when you have vowel initial syllables, it's actually analyzed as a glottal stop in there. So since this analysis will go, so if we apply this analysis, the answer will no, except nach. But it looks like we had the same story in MIHWeb when we have something like two-syllable word with a glottal stop between two vowels, and in the fast speech it can disappear. So you will get more or less something that we could treat as two vowels or probably diphthong. So those cases are strange and they are restricted to those cases when you have glottal stop. So we analyze this, and so it's possible to prove that there is a glottal stop over there through some alternations that you will get from, for instance, when you have plural morpheme that deletes the last vowel, you will see that there is a glottal stop over there. So those cases are frequent. So for those languages that I worked with, it happens. So glottal stop is neutralized, and you have something like two vowels, and there is only one step forward to show, so to analyze this as a diphthong. In your question, I see Caucasian languages that is more complicated. So in North Caucasian languages, we don't treat them as diphthongs. We mostly treat them as so there is no such cases, but if there will be something, we'll treat it as combination of vowel and some glide. And I don't know nothing about Kurtvelin languages, so sorry for this. Maybe they have something. I had a feeling that they don't, but I don't know.
Okay. Thank you. Well, we keep talking about clusters. So here Aldan Yerbalanov says, Nach languages, as far as I know, have CCVC roots. Is this a retention or an innovation?
I think that I need to check. I thought that they have something like CVCC, not CCVC. But if they have something like ST roots or something like this. So S or Sh and then plosive. Those cases are actually present in some other languages. So for instance, there are rare exceptions from this syllable patterns that I presented. For instance, in all Andic languages, the word for the 5 will looks like inshdugu or something like this. And in those languages, when you don't analyze this as vowel nasalization, because sometimes it's inshdugu, then it's definitely could be analyzed like insh and dugu. But in those languages, when you separate n, so it's in shtugu, there will appear such clusters. So if what you mean is something like stir something, I think it's there. You're right, but it's more or less present in Andic languages and probably in some others. If you mean something else, please correct. So please add something because I'm not sure.
Okay, here's a comment from Samapriya Basu saying, yes, Nichols treats the ST cluster in Nach as a single consonant diachronically. Okay. So
I don't know why. Sorry, I don't know much about diachronic changes. So I haven't spent much time on this. But I also need to add that there is a huge book on different syllable structures and clusters, and this ST and SH is a really common exception to syllable structure patterns found in language of the world.
Okay. We still have some time. I will go probably to some more general questions. For example, this, I don't know if it was probably answered at some point. Peter says that in the beginning you mentioned rare sound, and he says, do you mean rare cross-linguistically or in a particular language when you say this is a rare sound? And in the latter case, in terms of type frequency or token frequency?
So what do we have in slide 11? It was something. Actually, slide 11 is a map with their language. But the idea that when I say rare sounds, I try to distinguish a rare sound for East Caucasian languages, like for instance, glottalized L is rare for all languages of the world, and it's present in some East Caucasian languages like L. There are some sounds that are present in and more or less typical for East Caucasian languages, like for instance, I don't know, like glottals, but rare in language of the world. So there are this kind of thing, and all kind of rareness that I'm talking about is presence in their consonant inventory description. So it's not like, it's definitely another measure that could be done, and we have some work on it, comparing the frequency in some corpora or text and comparing frequency among different consonant inventories. So today I was talking about comparing sound across different consonant inventories.
Okay, so cross-linguistic, great. Let me see what are we missing here. I think I say the most important and the ones not answered by other people.
I've seen the question about je from Gilles Atier.
Yes, here.
Like,
yes,
je is not present anywhere, everywhere. Maybe he misunderstood z and je, but I don't know. Nor h. You know, Gilles, I think that the problem here is you're probably right, but these are the doculects that I gathered, and those are descriptions that I gathered. Probably there are some mistakes due to the process of me and Viola gathering this data, but I don't think, so it's possible that there are some languages without zh or h, velar one, but for some reason I do have them in my database with reference.
Okay. I see something is this claim about, but I don't know what claim. So, and it was also answered. But so if they want to ask more in detail, we can.
I think I can.
Okay.
Answer. I think answer to Thomas Weir about Wertherschen and Nietzsche. In Kibir-Kazasov, there is a description of Nietzsche from Nietzsche variety, but I was tricky in order to make maps. I was plotting a Wertherschen variety, so maybe it's not correct for the plotting, but made maps more fancy.
Okay. Thomas Weir is answering now. My claim in that case was about the absence of glottalized consonants.
Sorry?
My claim in that case was about the absence of glottalized consonants. So, or niche.
Ah, okay, yeah.
Niche or the. And Gilles answer, sorry. Michael Daniel answers, I agree as to the. Well, some discussion of what symbols to use, if the or what. So there is another question just written in the chat. I will copy it here, which is about how to code the geminates and long vowels, whether they should be one or two phonemes. Here I just copied from Yvonne Trice. So in the description of Dagestan languages, what are the arguments for analyzing geminates as monophonemic?
Yeah, I think it's again the problem of the analysis. So I've never worked directly with lets that have long vowels. That is strange, but it's the case. So again, there are two kind of things that you can call phonological. So long vowel. Long vowel phonetically is something that when you have more or less systematic distinction of vowels according to length, just simple duration. And phonological one, when you have this kind of distinction in length corresponds to something phonologically that you want. And sometimes when you have you have, I already mentioned those cases when we have dark vowel dialect, when you have disappearance of the vowel internal glottal stop, will cause something like two vowels of the same color will become something like long vowel. But again, it's definitely a question to the phonology, syllable structure, and phonetics in all cases. So you need to have all of them in order to make a decision. So it could, and sometimes this decision is not arbitrary, and it could be done. So you could have two analysis, except two.
Okay, I think this will be the last question, or second to last, because we are running out of time. But I find this interesting. So from Nick, he says, I am interested in correlations. For example, I expect that, for example, once you have one geminate, you are more likely to have others. The same with many other features. Are there any interesting such correlations?
Nick, definitely yes. So I had this in my slide because I actually put it there, analyze frequency and analyze something like combinatorical combinations of them. It could be done like this, and it's definitely so. For instance, it's not it's not so interesting to whether you have geminate or don't have this kind of feature. It's more interesting whether you have it as a feature. So if you extract those features, and you can easily look through all combination of different phonological features and find an analysis that will show you which features are mostly going together using this basket market analysis, for instance.
I think that's all for now. Anyway, we are saving the chat, so you will be able to answer and to see all the questions. Well, thanks to everyone. Thanks to everyone for joining us. We'll wait for you next week. Be aware that we are not changing to winter time in Russia. So if you are in Western Europe or in any place where you're changing times, double check your local time for next meeting. It's at 7 o'clock Moscow. And thanks everyone. See you next week.